Ladies and gentlemen, it is here, the Sculk sensor, and I honestly don't think there has ever been a single thing added to Minecraft that has been more anticipated or more exciting than this. Today's video, we're going to explore everything about the Sculk sensor that we know to date. Now, just to say, this is not the official release from Mojang or a snapshot or anything like that. What this is a fan-made mod, and I'll put a link to all that information down in the video description, but this is based on the knowledge we have so far, so it may change as the snapshots come out. If you want to keep an eye on all those changes and things, be sure to subscribe, as I will be covering the 1.17 update at every stage of the way. But for today, let's dive into what we know so far about the Sculk sensor. Okay, so first of all, the basics, right? This here is what it looks like, and there is the animation that happens when you move around, the vibration that gets sent to it, which looks super cool, like a little Wi-Fi signal, and of course the aesthetic of the block changes as well as it's activated, and then once it becomes like deactivated again as well. Now, just for a bit of fun, I decided I'd have a guess at what the recipe for this might be, because it has not yet been released. And this right here, this is my guess, okay? And I think maybe this will make more than one, but this to me would kind of make sense because it's not a full block and it looks like it would have obsidian. The ender pearls are used for teleportation and it is a redstone device, so this is what I'm thinking. Maybe that'd be a torch, maybe this would be Eye of Enders. What do you think, guys? I'd love to know your thoughts. Have a guess down in the comments what you think the recipe will be. But that's the very basics, right? Then we can look at the actual range this thing works. So inside here, we have a Sculk sensor. And this is going to trigger some of the others. We'll come on to that in a second. But if I'm moving around here, you'll see the area of effect this has. And basically, it puts out in all directions apart from directly up. Now, that makes sense because it is a half block, not a full block. And so that is the way that it is working right now. Now, in terms of what we've got right here, there's a couple things to sort of talk about here. If I flick this lever, you'll see that the noise of the lever powers the Sculk sensor, and if we actually fly up here, you'll see it powers it in all directions, right? But if you put a redstone signal into a Sculk sensor, it does not output on any of the sides, so that will not happen. Not that you necessarily need to, but we're just looking at everything that happens here today. Now, in terms of the actual range of this thing, if I flick this block again, this is as far as it goes, so it's a normal redstone output of 16 blocks. This is 5, 10, 15, and this torch here being on the 16th. Now, this is not a comparative output either. You can see we've got the comparators here, and I've got the chest here a lot closer to this one being a lot more further away, of course. Now, if I open this chest, it will trigger both of these, but only the lamp over here will go on. That is because that is within the 16 blocks. This one here is on the 17th. So it is not a comparative signal at this stage. I really hope they think about changing that, and sort of the louder the noise is, the further the signal goes. I think that would be useful, but we are not there just yet. Now, in terms of things like piston interaction with this thing, if we activate this sticky piston right here, you'll see that nothing happens. So this cannot currently be moved with a piston. In terms of if we have a slime block underneath, once again, it doesn't move with a slime block. So yeah, that at the moment, it doesn't move. It's not movable. I imagine that will stay the same, but that's just where we are currently at. Okay, so now I just want to look at TNT and see what happens if we place TNT next to this thing. Does it blow up or not? Because it does look like it could be made out of obsidian stuff, but I imagine, yeah, it does blow up. I sort of thought it would, but you know, we got to test these things, right? That's all part of what we're doing here today. Okay, so the other thing to look at is what we can use to trigger this thing, and there's like tons of things I've set up here for us to test. But one of the first things was an elytra, and then also using the elytra with rockets. So if I go up here and put myself into survival mode, we're going to fly past this one right here, and if it triggers, then a firework will shoot out of the dispenser right there. So let's see if this works or not when we put our elytra on. First of all, if we just fly by it, does anything happen? Okay, doesn't seem like it did. And the next thing to do is to put ourselves back into creative mode, and we'll see if anything happens when we fly by and fire a firework rocket. Because obviously the firework rocket does make a noise, so it's feasible that something could happen, but let's see how we go. So we'll fly by, and yes, it did. I think that set it off, right? Let's try this again. Yeah, it did. Okay, so when we shot our firework as flying by, this worked and triggered the firework there. Now, I'm not sure what the use of this may necessarily be, but in today's video, I just want to test out a few different things as we go through to sort of get a better idea as to how this works. Okay, very good. So now, in terms of wool, because obviously wool, as many of you will know, can be used to sort of dampen the signal and block it and that sort of thing. But if you walk across wool, it will still send signals. You can see here as I'm walking, it still will, unless, of course, you are shifting. So if you shift and walk, you can actually walk by this thing and there's no issues. Now, if we stand just here like this and we jump up and down, nothing happens. It's interesting. So even if you fall from a great height right here, like this, nothing actually happens. If we walk, it'll trigger, but when you're falling, it doesn't seem to recognize any sort of sound from a fall, which I thought was quite interesting. That is not because I'm on wool, by the way. If I come here and do it on the grass, again, we can fall from a great height. Nothing happens. It does not trigger. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Carpet, same thing. You know, you can shift on it to avoid it sending a signal. But if you walk on carpet normally, it will still trigger the Sculk sensor. So there's not like a way of like having that in your base to prevent it being triggered. Similarly, carpet here will not block a signal from me sent here through this block in the way that wool would. So if these blocks were wool, it would block the signal. Carpet doesn't do that. Even if you place 2 carpet on top of here like this, it still will, as you can see there, send the signal through. So I was playing around with like different ways you might be able to block the signal, but essentially that is what it is. And as I say, we walk on wool, it's the same. So that's sort of the wool thing talked about there. But of course, we can, oh, this is carpet, not wool. But if we get some wool right here, I'll show you guys about blocking it. So if we if I grab that out of my inventory, basically if we place some wool down here like this and we walk around, you'll see this will not get triggered. So many of you will know this from the Minecraft update videos, but if you're walking around here, the wool will dampen the noise and will block that. Now this means that you can of course place the wool in different orientations around the sensor block to trigger what direction the signal will be sent in, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now minecarts, just having a quick look at minecarts here, and I've got all the different types of rail just to prove that it doesn't matter what type of rail it's on, it will not trigger a Sculk sensor. Although minecarts do make noise, for some reason this is not detected. Now again, this could potentially change, but that's how it is right now. Now, this does change, however, if we can get an entity in here. If we put a pig in to our minecart, and out of the way, Mr. Pig. All right, let's try this again. If we put you there, come on now. There we go. So with a pig inside, when it oinks, although there's one in the way, each time the pig oinks, it will trigger this. So this would be a way of having like a bit of a random signal output if you wanted to have one, because obviously the pig will make a noise randomly. The other thing you could do is only have it within range of the Sculk sensor for a certain period of time. Then it would be a longer sort of delayed random signal, because obviously you don't know if the pig is going to oink when it's in distance, like if this was coming like a way down here and back again. So this is like a little way of doing a random output with the Sculk sensor. Okay, so just looking at a few other things now. First up, we have the note blocks, and if I right click the note block here, you'll see that obviously that does trigger a sound or a signal to the Sculk sensor. Similarly, if we open this up, if we play a music disc in here, this is obviously in the jukebox, then let's watch and see what happens here. Now the initial sensor there was from me, and by the seams of it, the music discs do not trigger the Sculk sensor, which is quite interesting. You would sort of expect that they would, but for whatever reason, they do not. So, yeah. Now, the other thing I wanted to test out was an ender pearl. If we ender pearl over to it, does this, like... Yes, it does. Okay, cool. So we could actually ender pearl ourselves over, and our landing, yeah, it does trigger it. Okay, that's quite interesting. Now, fire. Let's have a little look at fire here. If we've watched this for a little while, and I'm not triggering it myself, you'll see that fire does occasionally, when it crackles, trigger the Sculk sensor. There we go. There we go. So it can trigger it. I guess this is not like a periodic thing. This would be more random. Sometimes it seems to take a long time. Other times it seems to crackle very quickly, as you're seeing here. So yeah, definitely not the exact same amount of time between outputs. So again, another potential here for a bit of a randomized redstone output, and but fire crackling does indeed trigger it. Similarly, nether portals will occasionally trigger it as well. There we go. You saw one right there. If we watch it again, you can see how long it might take for the signal to trigger it. But the actual portal sounds itself, there we go, sent again, will trigger it. So I thought that was quite interesting too. Now over here, what we've got is some running water and some running lava. And if I fly up here so we can watch both, you'll see signals will come. There we go. One from the water there, from both of these things. That one was from the water as well. Can we get one from the lava, please? There we go. Perfect timing. So yes, lava and water will both trigger this. Still water, I believe, will not. So if we have just the source block of water here, I don't think it will. If we have just the source block of lava here, let's test this and see how this goes a second. Okay, so after watching this for a little while, it seems that if these are source blocks, it will not trigger. It's only the running water and running lava that will actually trigger the Sculk sensor there. Very good. Okay, what do we have in here? Oh yes, I wanted to test eating and see if this happens. Let's see when we eat. Yes, it does. Okay, so eating will also trigger it. That's interesting. I'm playing around, you know, I'm learning some things myself here as well, guys. The next thing I wanted to test was fishing. So let's let that close. Okay, so does the fishing rod... Okay, yeah, so immediately when we did it, it did trigger the Sculk sensor. And, oh, and the fishing itself, just holding the fishing rod there also triggers it. Look at that. That is interesting. And what if we reel it back in? I wonder if that is going to... Yeah, it does. Okay, so all facets of fishing do trigger the Sculk sensor. Again, just interesting to learn about these things and see what triggers it and what doesn't. Now, what do I have here? Ah, yes, the furnace crackle. Let's see if the furnace crackle triggers it by putting this stuff in here. Just to say as well, barrels, ender chests, and shulker box. I tested all of these. When you open them, they do trigger the Sculk sensor. Okay, so I believe this is triggering it. Let's just wait and double check as we see the furnace crackle once it's on. I thought, yeah, there we go. So it does send a signal, the furnace crackling. And again, you know, I'm sure there will be some uses for this, but for now it's just interesting to know these things. Okay, so now looking at some water sort of elements of this. First thing to say is if running water hits this thing, it does not break it. It does, of course, trigger it, as we saw before, but it will not break it, so that's kind of cool. One thing that is insanely cool, though, is this right here is an underwater redstone clock. And as you can see, it's very simple. The trapdoors here, they send a signal back and forth, and you could definitely play around with this, and you could toggle it and stuff to have different like amounts of output, like different times and stuff for the redstone clock and that sort of thing. But you can see here it does sort of send that signal as the clock closes. We're going to come on to clocks with these things later on, but for now I just wanted to look at that. Now what I'm going to do is get rid of you and get rid of you, so I'm going to break our clock for now, and I just want these things underwater here. Okay, very good. And me swimming around there is going to trigger them. But what I actually want to do is trigger some of these mobs underwater and just see. So like if we have a fish in here, does the fish trigger it? If we watch the salmon, yeah, okay, it seems to, right? We just keep watching it for a bit. It's hard to see where these signals are coming from. Let me get in the water here and see if the signals are actually definitely coming from our salmon. Yes, they were. There we go. We saw one there. Okay. So I'm guessing a squid will also trigger it. Yep, immediately the squid triggered it. A guardian has to, right? Oh, wait, hold on. I need to get myself out of peaceful mode. But a guardian, yeah, that definitely triggers it. A drowned must do, yep. And a dolphin? I think that was from the dolphin. Yeah, there we go. So essentially, yes, they do all trigger it, and I sort of assume they would, but it's also nice to test these things just to see, you know, whether or not they work, right? Now, what did I have? Oh yes, now this is an interesting one. So the bow and arrow sort of test. Now this is cool because there is the potential here to do a bit of a range. You'll see the shulker box. I keep mixing those up. The Sculk sensor over there. If we shoot our arrow at this block right here, it detects it. So it detects the noise of the arrow hitting the block, as you might expect, but that is still super, super cool. It does mean there's a lot more options there for triggering these things from a distance, which is super fun. Okay, so the next thing to say, again, this might be a little bit of an obvious one, but we're going to show it anyway in the video. That is that mobs will trigger it. So if we put like a skeleton in here, as the skeleton walks around, it will, of course, trigger it. The pig I mentioned before, whenever it oinks, that will trigger it too. But it's interesting that the footsteps do not. It's the actual noise that the mobs make that triggers it, not their footsteps. So yeah, I mean, mob farms and things with this are maybe going to be a bit trickier than we might have hoped and might have thought, but they're not going to be impossible. There will be ways of doing them, I'm sure. Okay, so one thing I wanted to cover as well was redstone clocks with Sculk sensors, because they are super easy, as you see here. Just by having something like this that makes noise, so we've just used a trapdoor here, you'll see that the noise sends a signal and it's going to keep going back and forth. So you've basically got a redstone clock that's just going to run forever, and there's no wiring, which is just so cool. As someone who enjoys redstone, to see this in the game is very, very cool. So, you know, you can have outputs from any of these sides, you know, 3 sides on each shulker if you wanted. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and this is a very simple way of doing redstone clocks. Now, of course, there will be loads more designs and things like that coming out, and I'm definitely going to feature a few on my channel. Today's just a bit of an overview, so we're just talking about the concept. But yes, you can do redstone clocks very easily with the Sculk sensor. So the other thing that's quite exciting is the opportunity for vertical redstone being made easier than ever before. If we flick the trapdoor right here, you'll see the signal gets sent up this way. Now, you could have stairs going up this way, you could have them going up like this and also like this, and, you know, spiraling to get them more like vertical. The range is not excellent, but there is still the possibility for doing it. And of course, the range is something that they do need to kind of balance very carefully, because you wouldn't want this thing triggered just by anything happening. You know, you do obviously want to, in certain situations, have like a definite input, you know, when you want the thing to activate. But this is possible. However, there is also a better way of doing it, which I'm going to show you now. So up there, we have a Sculk sensor next to a redstone lamp and just an iron block there for us to shoot with our bow. If we stand under here, we are currently 30 blocks away from this thing. So if we full on shoot at the bow right there, there we go. You can see this triggered, and that is 30 blocks in the air that this triggers. Now, you might say, yeah, okay, but you have to shoot the bow. However, what we can also do is use a dispenser here with an arrow inside, flick the button into a shape like this, and you'll see there the lamp gets powered. So we can power this and shoot a signal up quite high vertically like that if we want to. Now, in terms of how high this is the maximum we can do it, but basically there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and on the 11th block is where we've placed this little structure here. I've done a little cross structure because when you fire out a dispenser, it doesn't always go directly straight up. But yeah, this is a way of doing this and having the sensor go up a lot higher that way. You can also do this with firework rockets, as you see here. We can shoot one of these up, and the noise of that. Oh, that one didn't trigger. Hang on, it did before when I did it. Okay, this is really interesting because I tested this off camera. I'm wondering why. Okay, so this is not the same every time. So I might have accidentally made like randomized vertical output here, because sometimes it does work, as you saw there, but there was times as well where it didn't. Okay, that is interesting. So I guess it depends how well the rocket gets shot. This, by the way, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's on the 11th again. So yeah, this is really interesting. Okay, so there are definitely some options here. As I say, this is just an overview video, but we'll definitely explore this stuff. And guys, if you have ideas with like how we could use anything you see here today, please do let me know in the comments. I'd love to have an idea of what you guys would like to see me build. Even if you think it's impossible or a bit silly, it doesn't matter. Just show it down in the comments. Let's get the discussion going. What would you like to see done? Have you had ideas yourself about what can be done with Sculk sensors? Okay, so one definite cool thing you can do with this would be to have a bit of an automatic sheep farm. You see we've got the Sculk sensor here next to a dispenser that has shears inside it. Now, when the sheep eats the grass and its wool regrows, that is of course going to make some noise. So at that point, the Sculk sensor will trigger the dispenser and the shears will cut the wool. So we're going to wait until that happens. Now the sheep will obviously make noise as well, so that'll also trigger it. So you are going to lose a bit of durability on the shears because of that. But if we just watch until this eats the grass, you guys will see what I mean. Okay, so this was actually kind of a good point. The sheep there did eat the grass, but it had done a little bah just before it ate the grass. So because of that, the Sculk sensor was already triggered. So when it ate the grass, that noise didn't trigger it. But as you saw there, it will still work because it will still bah again later. And when it does, it happens. And then, of course, you just pick up the wool with a hopper minecart underneath here. And that's how it works. So, I mean, maybe need some tweaking and stuff. But again, quite a nice concept here that we could have an automatic sheep farm pretty easily. Okay, so next up, I want to talk briefly about mob farms. And this one right here is absolutely awful, and don't like quote me on this, but it's just to talk about the concept of how it could work. And the redstone's a mess and stuff. I will do videos on mob farms using these things in the future, but just to show the basic principle, if we get a skeleton, for example, spawning in there, you can see that the Sculk sensor means that it triggers the water and the skeleton is pushed down there and dies. Now we get a little bit of problems here with this like repeating, so what I think we're going to need to do is just have like more wool around this thing to prevent that. There we go. If we block that off. Okay, no, it was actually working. It's picking up the noise from like the horse and the other mobs. I've got rid of them, but the horse might still make some noise. But this is the general concept of what we could do. Now, there is a slight issue with this because for the Sculk sensor to be active, the player needs to be within 16 blocks of it, whereas mobs will not spawn unless you're 24 or more blocks away. However, one way I thought that we could have around this would be if you had, like, going off in, say, this direction, a constant back and forth of a rail cart. So you could AFK in the minecart and you could travel like to and from the mob farm that way, and then it would only like trigger when you were there, so you could go far enough away that mobs will spawn, and then you come close enough to activate the sensor so that when they make a noise, which they will do, it'll get powered and then you'll go away again and that type of thing. Now the question is whether or not this is actually better than just a normal system of having mobs spawn and having a redstone clock that has water being released and pushing the mobs off and that type of thing, periodically. This is still early stage. I haven't spent much time on this, and I think we can definitely use them for mob farms if we want to. Whether we can get them to be more efficient than what is currently available remains to be seen, but it's something worth thinking about nonetheless. The next really cool thing to talk about, guys, is doors. As you see here, if I just walk up to this door, it will open for me, and I can come through. And there's 0 redstone. There's nothing happening here that you guys can see, of course. It's just, this is it. I mean, it's so hidden. This is the whole, this is one of the best things about wireless redstone. It has to be. And I think I put the redstone wire on this side, just like a Sculk sensor hooked up like that. It's that simple. That is it. I mean, that's all there is to it. So that's super exciting, but probably more exciting than that are these things. These are the piston doors. Now, this one here is as compact as you could possibly have it. We walk up to the door, it opens for us, and it will close behind us. And then when we want to leave, we just walk up again, it'll open for us and close behind us. Now, the downside of this is you do have have the sort of Sculk sensor stuff showing in the ceiling there. So, you know, there's that. But other than that, like, it's incredibly compact, and it's amazing that you can even do this. Over here, we do have one that means that you don't have the Sculk sensor in the ceiling. You've got a wool and an iron block instead. So, I mean, if that's more your sort of thing, if you would rather have it this way, you can do it like that. Now, guys, if you want to see how to build these, I'm actually going to do a little tutorial video that will show you how to build these. There'll be a link in the description. So I'll show you how to build all these doors from scratch, and obviously feel free to suggest other ideas as well. But this is huge. This is massive. The fact that we now have these types of doors in Minecraft, I mean, yeah, I never thought I'd see the day. So the next thing I want to talk about is farming. A lot of people have been thinking that you could make something like this, where as the sugarcane grows, there we go, it gets harvested, and that you could do this not just for sugarcane, but for all different types of crop farms in Minecraft. However, guys, unfortunately, this does not work, because if we put the tick speed up a second, let's see, random tick speed, just put it something like really high like this, you'll see that when this sugarcane actually grows, it doesn't make a noise. So unfortunately, this is not going to be a thing. Why are you not growing? Come on, dude. Let's have you. Let's have you, boy. So unfortunately, my game actually crashed at this point, and I had to reload it, and then we did it again. Okay, so if we now put the random tick speed up here, if we do, here we go, random tick speed, and put it up really high, so this will just grow really quickly. You'll see that as the sugarcane grows, it does not make a sound. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a way that we're going to be able to do it with farms, because none of them make a sound. I just made that sound. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any use for these with crop farming as such. So there we have it, guys, an overview of everything about the Sculk sensor, or was it, you know, did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comments if there's anything you think I should have mentioned, or if there's any ideas you have for upcoming build projects, or ideas or features or anything like that that are involving the Sculk sensor, because I do want to make a lot of videos on this. I think there's gonna be a lot of cool redstone stuff we can do, and I love your ideas, I really would. So let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you want to stay tuned to all of the updates and things with Minecraft 1.17 as they come, then please do consider liking and subscribing. It really is greatly appreciated. But for now, guys, that is about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. With wireless redstone now being in Minecraft, it really got me thinking, what would be the next big thing? What is like wireless redstone was always unthinkable. What is the next unthinkable thing that could come to Minecraft redstone? If you've made it this far in the video and you're still listening at this point, have a think and let me know in the comments if anything comes to mind.